I came across this TikTok, and though I think it, like I said, could be triggering, I think it could also be insightful about breaking generational curses and talking about generational trauma. And what do you do when a person doesn't know they're traumatized? And I don't mean this in a, I'm going to diagnose somebody that I saw on the internet kind of way. I mean, somebody tells you a story about their lives and it feels so obvious that they've been traumatized. But then there's sort of that nuance of maybe you're one of the very few people who experience something that doesn't, quote, leave you traumatized. But I think realistically, this is like a universal no, no. So check out this TikTok that I saw and we'll have a conversation about it.
My mom taught me how to kiss when I was younger.
What did she tell you to do?
She told me how to tongue kiss when I was younger.
Like, what's the instructions?
It wasn't no instructions. She showed me with her mouth. Like
She kissed you?
it's my mother.
No, I'm just okay.
I love
My parents barely kissed me on the cheek.
No,
So,
my mom
just stopped kissing my son on the mouth.
She showed me how to tongue kiss when I was younger. Remember, my mom was 17. She's a baby. Look at all the babies that's having babies
for
now,
sure.
and look how they.
See, when we're trying to figure out what's wrong with Jim Jones, that right there.
So again, sometimes you'll see a celebrity and sometimes you'll notice that they're a little off, or you'll notice people in your life and you're like, oh, like they're a little off. But then you kind of hear a person's like detail of their story and you start to sort of unravel why, like the why.
That right there. That ruined him. And you could see that he didn't feel like nothing was wrong with it. He's like, that's my mother. And then he's got this look of delight on his face as he's actually recalling this shit. And she stole parts of his childhood. Because that is something that a young boy is supposed to learn with a girl his age. Not his freaking mother. Like, that is so inappropriate. So he's been stuck, in my opinion, he's been stuck in that child state forever. And that's why he'll never grow up. Like, him, Steven Jackson, they're gonna forever be like the oldest YNs ever. He's still gonna walk around and act tough. He's still emotionally unstable. That's why he cries at the drop of a hat, because she ruined parts of him. He's like, yeah, that's my mother. That's not normal, Jimmy.
So I saw that video and I thought to myself, like, there's so much of this that we see. And I think Chat says it perfectly. I think some people don't feel traumatized, but definitely shape the rest of their life negatively. I meet so many people, and especially I think men haven't been given the right tools just yet to sort of navigate their trauma, though the tools are out there. I think that society is still stigmatizing them for not seeking or for seeking that help. And I think that they have to recontextualize the story in order not to feel traumatized. I had a man tell me once that for some reason, in his eyes, he believed that assault or sex with an adult traumatized girls more than it did boys. And I said, why do you think that? And he said, because for boys, it's like a fantasy, but for girls, it's like traumatic. And I was like, well, why do you think that though? And then he was just like, well, because I kind of imagine it happening to me and it doesn't sound so bad. And I was like, well, what if it was, of course, you do the normal thing where you're like, what if it was a male teacher and not a female teacher? And then all of a sudden they're grossed out. And I've had this conversation with boys on the internet, right? Like the moment we're talking about girls doing it, they're like, that's not even possible. Like a girl couldn't even assault me if she wanted to. But then, oh, I mentioned it's a guy and they're like, oh no, a guy, So I think there's something to be said about every single individual being able to deconstruct their relationship with that trauma, or why the thought of it doesn't sound traumatizing or does sound traumatizing. I remember in high school, we had a couple of teachers who ended up going to prison for engaging with students. And one of the teachers in particular, a lot of people felt like, quote, bad for him. And I kept trying to like put this into perspective. I don't agree with their assessment, but it was interesting that they felt bad for him because they thought he was ugly. And they thought like, oh, this is like the first time someone young and pretty was interested in him. And I was like, skirt, pause. Like, what are you talking about? It's still an adult in a teacher position engaging with one of his students. I don't care if this is the first mercy fuck he's ever had. Like, what are we talking about? And I think it's a big part of us projecting and internalizing and misunderstanding how the context of a situation doesn't allow the greatest outcome. So we talked about this on stream just a few days ago, where we were talking about guys asking like, oh, do you want to see my penis? And somebody in chat, it took me a second to get it, but somebody in chat was so right that when we take away just all of the assumed pretenses leading up to this question, and we just assume it's a person talking to a person, it is like basically never appropriate for you to be like, hey, do you want to see my penis? It's like you would have to do so many things leading up into that question for it to then be appropriate. And I think that works with everything else, right? Like sometimes I think when we problem solve, we start with the end result and we forget to go back to how we got here in the first place in order to really decide if something is right or wrong. Like I saw this with the Ethan Klein discourse in my comment section, where people were just seeing the fact that Ethan Klein was a content creator who felt like his content was stolen, so he's retaliating. They're like, that makes sense. But that's not the story. The story doesn't start there. The story starts hundred of steps before we even got here. So for people just coming into the story, they're not thinking about all the things that led up into this moment. Think about all the guys in celebrity culture who were given older women to engage with sexually in order to, quote, become men. Or think about T.I. checking his daughter's hymen to make sure she was still a virgin. Like, this didn't just start with this story. It was steps and steps and generations leading up into this conversation. And so when I saw this about Jim Jones, I just kept thinking to myself, like, how many other celebrities or people of status or just people throughout our lives, like, we see and we don't understand the full context of the discourse. Like I think about Ethan Klein talking about his like feeling ostracized from his family trauma and never having like a group of friends and always wanting to be included, but eventually nobody wants to hang out with him, which makes sense because he's got an attitude. Trisha Paytas talking about growing up with her mom having a revolving door of boyfriends and how some of those boyfriends allegedly like did stuff to her. And like you think about all these conversations just so casually happening on the internet and podcasts, and people are there basically confessing their trauma but not able to put it into context. Think about the guy we just watched from Caleb Hammer, the ex-employee. For some people, they're watching it and they're just focused on Caleb being a bad boss. But like we already knew Caleb was trash. What was interesting was this person, independent of Caleb, has problems. But people are like, well, he's been traumatized by his job. He was traumatized before he got that job. And so when we think about like content creators, or even like, I was thinking back to the Babe Bro days, like when Destiny would casually say like talk about his like really traumatized childhood and everybody would be like, oh, that's crazy. But like, no, that's literally crazy. Like not only were you abused, but like your whole family structure is incredibly dysfunctional. Or Sneeko talking about watching his girlfriend have sex with somebody else and realizing like, I don't know how to feel about this, and watching everyone bully him for it, which, you know, moved him in a direction. I don't think we understand that when we get on stream or get on these podcasts or talk about our life, yeah, it might be a fun way to be sensational and like make something go viral, but also you're telling us so much about your life. And there's something really, just devastating about it. I think it's devastating. Like all these people with these horrible childhoods getting on stream talking about their horrible upbringing like it's just a fun story. But hey, they're famous and rich, so I guess it was okay. You know what I mean? Ugh. Chat says this reminds me of FT Signifier's video on celebrity boy moms. Don't even get me started. There was this, there is this phenomenon of like living vicariously through your kids, which I think was so prevalent in celebrity culture, let alone everyday culture with boy moms and stuff. But there is, like, I think about the Jacksons all the time, like Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. And I think about Quincy Jones, and I think about all these like very famous people in Hollywood. I think about all these child celebrities. I think of Leonardo DiCaprio. I think about like all of these people that I just think like, all of them have like these crazy stories at some point or another where you're like, wait, that was your life? And then it starts to, you know what it starts to do? Unravel the reality that being a celebrity ain't all that. Like, I know we think it's all that. And I want to make a podcast about this maybe next week about what's the point of getting famous and rich if it's not to liberate yourself, but to realize like once you're famous and rich, it just like puts you in a different kind of trap. Like, what was the point of becoming a billionaire or making $100 million if it didn't make you any more free? Isn't that the whole dream of being poor and thinking you're going to make money to get out of this bad situation, but then you're trapped in another one? Which is why it's interesting to see celebrities use like activism as a part of their brand, but none of them are actually like retiring out on a farm and minding their business. They're just doing the same thing over and over again to make these record label like record labels money or the Hollywood thing keep going or the music. I don't know. There's something really gross. And then it doesn't change for the kids. Like, I don't know that we're changing it for the kids. That's what I want to know. Are these people who are having kids in celebrity status situations, are they really changing the trajectory for their kids? Or are they just encouraging their kids to go into the same business that was supposed to be a means of liberation, but ended up just being another trap? And not every celebrity is trying to get out of a bad place into a better place. But for the ones that said they were, if you're trying to get from a bad place out of a bad place using a sort of bad place to do it, then when is it going to stop? Like, when's it going to actually be about the liberation part? When are you actually going to give the next generation an opportunity to live peacefully, to be peaceful? And I was thinking about that TikTok I talked about. I think I talked about it on stream last week, or maybe I talked about it on the Discord. I don't know. But I saw this TikTok of a guy who said, so you're telling me none of my ancestors did shit with their lives? Like, I'm just sitting here working minimum wage and none of you did anything. But the truth is that generational wealth disappears like every 3 generations. So even if your ancestors had made money at some point, the next few generations would have squandered it away. We don't even keep it. And so then I wonder if that's why people never get out of the wealth trap. What if they reach celebrity status and then give it to their kids? Because in a way they're giving a curse to their children, but at least the curse pays the bills. Because they know eventually like their kids will spend it. I knew a rich person who was like legacy money rich and had connections to a European family. And they were asset rich, not cash rich. So during lockdown, they're like, oh yeah, I'm living in the pool house. I was like, oh cool, you have like a cute little backyard pool house. Their pool house was like 3,600 square feet. I'm like, so you have like a house? They're like, yeah, but it's like the smaller house. And I was like, what's the big house? Like, they had 3 huge houses on a like 30-acre lot or 50-acre lot, whatever it was. And I was like, oh, so like this is that generational kind of legacy money. Their parents had never worked a day in their job, and they were the weird kid for like getting a job. They had an artist job, but they had a job, and their parents had never needed to work a job. Like, I know some people like that. They are not good people, but those people were mooching off parents and taking money off of their like dying parents. These people just had generational wealth. They didn't have to work. And I was like, but they didn't do anything. Like, it's not like they do anything with it. It's not like, oh, I don't have to work. I'm going to go volunteer my time, or I'm going to build something, or I'm going to spend it with my family. It's like, we don't work, so we're going to go network and hang out with other rich people. And I'm like, ew, like that's so, but maybe this is a poor person perspective. Maybe because I'm middle class, in my mind, I'm like, if I was worth that money, I wouldn't be worrying about getting to the next chart or like doing the next thing or like going viral, or like, I wouldn't think about the thing, whatever the thing is in your job. But maybe I think that because I'm middle class, maybe if I ever got rich, like maybe I would think that. Like, I'm sure Joe Rogan, who don't like, but I think Joe Rogan probably stayed the same quote even after he made money. He got a little bit more conspiracy theorist, but I mean, in terms of like his attitude, I don't think that he quite changed that much. But a lot of people, not only do they change because money exposes them, like look at Ethan. Ethan didn't have money when the first copyright case happened, when he first was being taken down because of his, his whole thing years and years ago. Ethan didn't have money. We donated to raise that money for him because he didn't have it. Now that he has money, now he's going after content creators. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be so rich that I don't care if people take a YouTube video that is so meaningless. Like, he acts like his content nuke is meaningful. It's just some random YouTube video you made for a time that the internet won't even remember in 20 years. Or if they do, it's like, it's going to be lore. You know what I mean? He's not Mozart making a great composition. So like, you would think when you're that rich, the last thing you would do with your money, time, and access is like go after people. Like, who cares? For what? Like, you know what I mean? And some people are like, it's the principle of the matter. What does that even mean? Why does he care? Why does he actually care? I don't know. Chet says, was literally thinking of this throughout the weekend. And if selling your soul means giving up your privacy or humanity in a sense, I wonder about that as well. Like, I definitely had moments in my life where I thought oversharing could be a ticket to fame when I was younger, because I saw people do it. I saw people tell their stories and overshare and get famous and rich. And I was like, man, maybe it's worth it. But I never could bring myself to overshare the things that I think would have made me viral, if that makes sense, or done it in a way that could have made me viral. And a big part of it, this is so weird, but I think I knew even before therapy, I think I knew I was going to repair my relationship with my family. I think I knew I was going to repair my relationship with people in my life. I think I also learned that I didn't want to be that person in some way. I saw a TikTok yesterday, I think, that said, hey, if somebody you know in your life becomes famous and you get on TikTok and you're like, they were mean to me in high school, but it's not abusive against the law or like something to do with like a really horrific like crime, I don't care. And I was like, yeah, there's to some extent, I don't care that somebody was mean to you 20 years ago. Like, get over it. Like, you know what I mean? But if somebody was abusive, if somebody took advantage of you, if somebody stole $100,000 from you, if somebody like raped somebody, then we got to talk about it. But I don't really care if somebody was like passive aggressive to you in time, or I don't know, like that's not important to me. But I think it's like it says something more about the character of the person telling the story than anything else, which is maybe the feeling we got when we were watching that ex-Caleb Hammer guy, Noah. Because the way he was telling the story, we already knew Caleb sucked. So now the question is like, do you also suck? And maybe in some ways and maybe not in other ways, but I felt like Noah didn't just suck because he worked for Caleb. I think he sucked before he worked for Caleb, by his own admission, by his own storytelling. And that's what people have to remember. We're not just judging people, but at least on my channel, I try not to judge people just for who they are today. We try to go back and figure out how we got here. So I think I like this video on TikTok. Who is this? This is Cerebral Assassin talking about Jim Jones. He said, this is why Jim Jones is the way he is, right? This, and I'll put the link in chat. This is why he's the way he is. Now it makes sense. Now it's all coming together. Jim Jones didn't just start here. It came from somewhere. You know how we all make those jokes about Leonardo DiCaprio and how Leonardo DiCaprio is dating 25-year-olds because of his childhood trauma and his stuntedness? Yeah. Did you hear Jared Leto now has like multiple accusers coming out against him? Yeah. I think we all saw that coming. And like, that's the thing. Why is this a pattern in celebrity bubbles? And I think a big part of it is because you have to be a pretty shitty person to be that rich and famous. Not all the time, not always, but most of the time. And if it's most of the time, that means most of the people that we enjoy are probably not that great. I think about it with Ellen. At one point, we all loved Ellen, and now she's like a fallen soldier. You know what I mean? We all loved Ethan, now he's fallen. We all love blah, blah, blah. Even Beyonce, the internet I'm on does not like Beyonce right now. And a big part of it is because, again, she keeps posting all of this Black liberation stuff. But then her and Jay-Z, their associations, their networking, like how rich do you got to be before you get out? Like how much money is it going to take for you to move you and your family out of the bubble? But they don't want out of the bubble. They want to stay in it. But why? Like, what is so interesting about being in this particular bubble that you want to stay in? You know, I was watching a little documentary series. Maybe we'll watch it actually next Monday. But it's about like how rich people live. And it's the most vomitous, disgusting, deplorable thing I've ever seen in my life. It's so gluttonous. It's offensive. And they were talking about Jay-Z and Beyonce's $50,000 champagne bottle or whatever. And I just like, no, I'm sorry. Like it's even... And maybe that's me talking out of my ass because I don't make money like that. But $50,000 for champagne, girl, never worth it. I refuse to believe it is worth it. I refuse to believe spending $50K on that bottle is good or healthy or the right thing to do as a community member. I refuse to engage in this. Like, I understand why people went for Hassan for his $3 million house, even though living in LA is crazy and like, I don't know what else you want him to do. But I understand why even FT Signifier raised an eyebrow at his little car choice. And I understand he dresses really expensive. But, you know, we can have critiques, but I'm also going to have critiques of disgustingly rich people. And just think about like, see, this is why when conservatives say, oh, rich people, they'll give to charity. We don't need to tax rich people. Rich people buy $50,000 champagne bottles. You know what I mean? Like, no. The one thing I will say I, for a time, liked about J.K. Rowling, she's a fallen soldier. See, all these fallen people, you like them and then you realize they're pieces of shit. she used to talk about all the charities she would give to and how she had like a multiples and multiples. And I think that's important too, because girl, you're worth a lot of money. You know? Chet said Hassan is also leasing his car, the most average thing someone can do. Very true, actually. Very true. And it was a dated car. It wasn't even like a Bugatti or where's your Bugatti? It was like a dated sports car. I'm not a car girly, so I don't even know. But it was dated. Okay, so like I'm not that, you know, again, I don't care because I think in ratio to his money or what he makes or how he makes his money, like I'm less upset. Again, I feel like we're holding streamers more accountable than like high-end celebrities, or holding celebrities more accountable than we're holding world leaders. You know, I just want to make sure it's proportional. I think it's why I'm upset with Ethan a little bit, because I'm like, you are in such a position of power to say, oh, I don't care. Yeah, if little guys want to talk about me, like, good luck. You know, look at me. I'm worth $20 million. I have a family. I'm happy. I have kids. But instead, he's like, I feel like what happened with Ethan is he's missing out so badly for a friend group and for a community that if the community rejected him, he's just going to go after people and make it miserable for everyone. But he's actually a bully, and bullies are just hurt kids who wanted friends or wanted to be loved in the way they were neglected. The dilemma is like, it's not our job to love the bully. It's the bully's job to realize they've turned into a bad guy because they weren't loved properly. And that's the thing that people aren't getting, right? Yeah, he's acting like an incel. Yeah, going after all these women. Like what? At what part? And for him to be like, I'm a progressive. At what point is being a progressive reasonable for you to go after 3 people who definitely don't make that much money? And in the name of what? Like, just don't go after them. You know, again, I'll bring this up because I think it's so important, but Hank and John Green, you know how they have DFTBA, Don't Forget to Be Awesome? They made the conscious decision not to copyright DFTBA, even though they could have because they made it up, so they wouldn't have to go after their fans. Because I don't know if you started to see DFTBA. I started to see DFTBA, oh my God, Don't Forget to Be Awesome stuff in like Target and Walmart. And that's because they never copyrighted it. But if they had copyrighted it legally, they would have had to go after every single one of their fans who had an Etsy shop or sold it at like farmers markets. And they were like, we don't want to do that to our community. Like ultimately, we would rather have a community that can make money off this merch than go after every single person that made Don't Forget to Be Awesome a reality. And that is some community ass behavior. That's what I wanted to see from Ethan. I wanted to see that energy from Ethan. But instead, he ended up exposing himself for what he had been saying he was anyway, a dirty ass capitalist. A dirty ass fucking capitalist. You might as well call yourself a Republican. He's exactly the rich person that every progressive is like, this is why being rich is like, this is why they say eat the rich. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Chet says money corrupts. Honestly, I think it just exposes people for who they are. I think Ethan's always been this way. I do. I think money only exposes people for who they are. And I think if you find yourself being corrupted by money, you should give it away or do something with it. But the fact that you don't, I don't know. I don't think guns kill people. I think people kill people because like I refuse to take away the responsibility from people. Everyone loves to blame everyone but themselves. It's us. We're the problem. Humans suck. But also, a look says, and I agree with them, that the hottest take we can have is that humanity is worth it. And I also believe humanity is worth it. I think we're just like these biological creatures that are really giving ourselves way too much credit. But it's us. We're corrupted. We have problems. But that doesn't mean we can't get better, you know? All right. I just wanted to open up with that monologue because, girl, it was on my mind, girl.